All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Josh Prue. I'm the Director of Alumni Engagement for the Alumni Relations Office at the UConn Foundation. We are excited to have you all join us today for this discussion on LinkedIn. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Kate Krause, Samantha Morris-Avery, and together, along with our colleague, KRISTEN, who's not with us today, we have been your go-tos for all things career in this virtual space as the pandemic continues to move along. Hopefully, we'll be able to hold some things in person with you at some point in the near future, but we're thrilled to have you joining us over your lunch break today, or perhaps over a cup of coffee if you're on the West Coast. Welcome to the 2022 iteration of our annual month of career and professional development. Many of you have probably participated or heard about this in the past, either under our virtual career hack series that we run throughout the year, or perhaps in a session that we've done in previous years, regionally or here online. But we are thrilled to bring you year 5 as we annually pause in February to really just focus on all professional and career development opportunities, along with our Black History Month. So we urge you to take a look at all the different programming that is happening coming out of our office this month. But before we get started, this year we're excited to have 7 events scheduled this month for this month of February, from today's LinkedIn to financial literacy, speaking with a former director from Marvel, who now works for Warner Brothers. We have a partnered event with the Connecticut Small Business Development Center on is your business a hobby or is it actually a business? Psychological safety in the workplace, supporting women in leadership. So you name it, we have opportunities to get some more information about boosting your career to that next level. So take a look at our website at foundation.uconn.edu and you'll find all of our events listed there. Now, back to today. As the Great Resignation continues to rage on across the professional landscape, we know that people are trying to figure out ways to enhance their own professional profiles, all of their expertise that they have, and make sure that they're getting noticed by recruiters. So I think many of us can use some polishing on our LinkedIn profiles, and perhaps some of us can use a little bit more digging into a deeper dive into the incredible resource that's literally just at our fingertips, and in most cases, just in our pocket. So we're thrilled to have 2 of our experts from our Center for Career Development at UConn joining us today to help us dig a little bit deeper into our LinkedIn experience. But before I turn this over to them, I want to review a couple of things for all of you to manage your participation today. The first, we do now offer closed captioning. So if you would like to utilize this service, please make sure that you visit your toolbar and select the closed captioning option there. One of my colleagues is going to be dropping in the instructions there in the chat just momentarily, so please make sure you take a look there if you need any further help. Second, the chat is also open, so we encourage you to feel free to drop in where you're logging in from, engage with your fellow alums, discuss network, whatever it is that you might need. Please make sure you jump in there, get to know some people that are joining you today. Next, we realize there's going to be questions tied to this, so please, if you can, because the chat can sometimes get very busy, what we recommend is making sure that you're utilizing that Q&A function on your toolbar. So it's a separate function from the chat. Make sure you drop any questions in there. The panelists and myself will be moderating those, and we'll make sure that we get to as many as we can throughout the program or at the end of the presentation today. The last thing I'll say before I turn this over and introduce our panelists is that we are recording the session. So if you need to jump off for a call or a meeting, or you just need to grab lunch, whatever it is, as long as everything goes well with technology, we'll be able to share a recorded link with you in our follow-up communications. So stay tuned for that if you have to jump off. So that being said, let's talk about our panelists today. First, a veteran to our Elevate Career Series. We welcome back BETH SETTJE. BETH has been one with the university's Center for Career Development since 2001, and she currently is an associate director. She enjoys helping students and alumni both enhance their marketability and really strengthen their career-related areas with resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn, you name it. Prior to working at UConn, BETH held positions in Res Life, student activities, orientation, and academic advising. And she is married to a UConn alum and mother of a UConn alum and mother to a UConn student. So there's a number of things that BETH is tied to the institution with. While not a graduate herself, she's an honorary Husky because of all these different things that bleed over. She holds a bachelor's degree in marketing and English from Arcadia University and also a master's in college student personnel from the University of Maryland. So Beth, thank you very much for joining us. Joining Beth as well, we have KRISTEN Soprano, a proud CLAS 2004 alum. KRISTEN joined the Center for Career Development as a career consultant in 2017. She's a certified professional resume writer through the Professional Association of Resume Writers and Career Coaches, and she works diligently to support students on various topics from resumes, cover letters, career and major exploration, interviewing, and any type of career development opportunities you can imagine. So she also is, if that's not busy enough, manages the Career Center's undergraduate student internship program. She also provides student interns with opportunities to develop personal and professional skill sets that help strengthen the connection between their academic and career interests. And add to that, she also oversees the practice interview program. So before returning to UConn, KRISTEN worked in many different industries, but spent the majority of her career working in human resources and talent acquisition. So we have no shortage of expertise here. Beth, KRISTEN, both, thank you so much for always being such great partners with us. We're thrilled to get started here, and we'll throw this over to you guys.
Yeah, all right. Well, thanks, Josh, and thank you everybody for joining us today. I've exhausted myself hearing about everything I do with Josh's reading of my bio there. So again, thank you for having both of us. So as Josh mentioned, Beth and I are going to be here to talk a little bit about LinkedIn today. You know, we all know what LinkedIn is, hopefully. We've all been using LinkedIn in some ways, but in some ways there's more ways that you might be able to utilize LinkedIn that's beyond just the surface. So that's what Beth and I are here to talk about today. Again, I'm going to be able to hopefully leverage some of my experiences I have in recruiting and you know, career services to lend some of those insights to you as well. And Beth will also be kicking us off as well, talking about a few of those. So again, as Josh mentioned, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A. We'll make sure we get to them as quickly as possible.
Sorry, I had myself on mute to make sure no extra weird noises came through from the cats or anything. Hi, everyone. I'm Beth. As Josh said, I've been with the Career Center and UConn for about 20 years now. Really do love the university and the students and alum that I've been working with. It's been a mutual learning experience, I think, for all of us. Greatly enjoy meeting students and then when they become alum as well. So today, Chris and I are going to focus truly on a little bit more of the complexities within LinkedIn. We hope everyone has at least that basic profile. If you haven't set that up yet, look back at the resources Josh sent in advertising today's webinar. There's also lots on the Career Center's website, certainly lots through LinkedIn and just in general. And I encourage you to, at minimum, get that profile set up so then when you go to do these deeper dive ideas, they make a little more sense. So that said, we're going to go to the next slide. So our topics today is we're going to talk again a little bit more about LinkedIn and what it can do for you. So we are going to briefly cover how to build a robust profile. We thought it would be remiss to ignore it, right? But again, we hope that you already have established at least that basic one. And then we're going to go into the different sections such as interests and groups, connecting with one another. There's definitely a wrong way to do it. So we're going to make sure that we help redirect anyone that might have been doing it the wrong way. How to find one another through the alumni search tool, how to use LinkedIn as a job search activity as well, how to just continue to constantly be engaged in LinkedIn, really how to make it work for you, and just a few other tips. So feel, as Josh mentioned, Chris mentioned, ask questions as they come to you, put them in the Q&A. Josh is going to be moderating. He'll answer some might just naturally be answered through the topics. And if they're not, by the end, we'll certainly make sure to talk to folks as well. So let's look at the ways you can use LinkedIn. So first and foremost, right, it is a way for you to showcase your brand. We all have our own brand. You're creating an image that you want others to see. So even more than the resume, and definitely more than an interview, LinkedIn very often is the first introduction to you, and you are controlling it. So if anyone here has ever gone on a blind date, or you are out with colleagues or with a family member, and you meet a third person, and that third person says, "Oh, I've heard so much about you." Usually it's good, but it's been framed by the middle person. Here's the chance for you to design you the way you want others to see you. And I think that's pretty significant, and it goes back to your personal brand. LinkedIn contains so many facets, and we're going to cover as many as possible. We probably won't get to them all. That's just not realistic. The other aspect to consider with LinkedIn is LinkedIn is extremely agile. They are sometimes daily, right, Chris? They are constantly changing the platform. And unless someone studies LinkedIn as their full-time job, which unfortunately Chris and I just cannot do, it is possible that you have something on your LinkedIn page that we haven't even seen yet, because the way LinkedIn phases in the new options, they don't give it to everyone at once. So just kind of keep that in mind and know if LinkedIn does become a priority for you, you'll want to build it into your regular weekly, monthly activities that you're looking at it, updating, etc. So each element of LinkedIn really allows you to highlight your attributes and demonstrate your key qualities, such as your expertise, your values, your personal vision. I'm going to go through the 8 categories on the screen in a moment. So kind of discussed, it's maintaining a professional online presence. It's your brand. How do you want to present yourself? You have the opportunity to highlight experiences, your skills. Maybe you developed a skill in the last year or two that you really haven't thought about putting on your LinkedIn, but when you think about, take that step back and say, this is something that might add value to another person, to an organization, even if you're not job searching. We're going to talk a lot about that in a little bit. It's a way to stay updated on industry related news. When Chris and I were working on this in the last couple of weeks, and I had LinkedIn open, and in the right corner, it said LinkedIn news. And what caught my eye, Tom Brady retired. And it said 3 minutes ago. And it's so you'll get both news that's timely in what's in pop culture, what's going on, as well as relevant news, political, career related, etc. It is absolutely a way for you to be self-promoting in a venue that supports that. So I think in the American society, we are taught to not brag, and that we're seen as selfish if we do that, or we're seen as boastful. However, in LinkedIn, you kind of have to, and it is absolutely okay. Now, there's probably, again, ways that are more subtle to do it versus saying, look at the award I won today, right? That's probably a little obnoxious, but certainly an acknowledgement. I'm so appreciative of the blah, blah, blah organization for recognizing my outstanding work with X. That is a very appropriate way to promote oneself. You can start thinking about, where do I want to go next? Whether next is 6 months, next might be 5 years away, right? So short-term, long-term goals. You can start doing research on different employers that appeal to you. You can also research those employers if they are a competitor, because maybe they have an idea that's savvy that you want to learn more about. So it kind of goes both ways. But definitely researching and following employers is a good way to expand your circle. You will be able to connect with alumni and key professionals. And for example, I'm going to call out Valerie in the chat, Valerie Magoon. Look at you, Valerie. We hadn't even started yet. If you're interested in building a meaningful network, let's connect. That is amazing. Valerie, please send me a LinkedIn connection. I am happy to connect with you. That's what it's all about. How can we help each other? Networking has such a negative connotation. So many people are scared of that word. And really all it is talking to each other and having conversations. And how can I help you? And that way, another thing that a lot of students say they're uncomfortable with, well, what do I have to offer someone? I'm asking them for help. I don't like asking for help. Flip it. How can you offer help? And then it becomes more reciprocal. Absolutely. LinkedIn allows you to apply for jobs. Now, as alumni, depending on when you graduated, you may or may not be thinking about internships, right? Like if you're a recent alum and you might be going back to grad school, or even if you're not recent alum and you're thinking about grad school, internships make sense. But for those of us that are more in my age realm, you may have taken some time off for any number of reasons. You're looking to do a career shift. You had to pause in your career. There's this new thing. It's about 10 years old. I literally heard about it off the Today Show a few weeks ago, called a returnship. And I thought that was such a cool concept. So basically it is a paid internship that is designed for us, for adults, not young and emerging adults. So these are anywhere from 26-week to year-long programs. They give workers a chance to break into high-paying, high-growth fields. They benefit the companies that are trying to find qualified candidates for skilled positions. So I have some websites that I used for this, and when Chris is talking, I'll put them in the chat so that way people can see the link of where I read about them. There's some companies that's all they do is run returnships, and there's about 100 companies that are doing it that were noted in these articles, but I have a feeling that it's just going to continue to grow, and you may learn more about that. You will also engage in conversations around professional interests. Oh, let me back up for 1 second. Chris and I added this in late and I almost forgot. Sorry, Chris. So when you're thinking about applying for returnships and jobs, you may want to think about your interviewing skills, right? When was the last time you were on the interviewing side? So Chris is going to talk about this more at the end of the presentation, but there's some excellent tools in LinkedIn that you can use to practice. There are also some resources on the Career Center website, and Chris, all someone needs is their net ID, right, to access Big Interview. So if you still remember your net ID, or you want to work with the university to rediscover your net ID, that's the one that was 3 letters and 5 digits, not PeopleSoft, net ID, you can access Big Interview, and that's just another virtual option for you through the career site and completely free. So LinkedIn not only is a tool for you to grow and learn, but if you are someone who is hiring and maybe you don't have a full hiring HR team, you can use LinkedIn as a way to promote your jobs. And Chris is actually going to talk about that in a little bit, about a way that happened in our own office. We just have that coming up in another slide. So just remember, self-promotion is more than just allowed. It is absolutely necessary. And we know that we all have different styles. And here's just a wonderful way that you can start thinking about it. All righty. So Chris, I'm going to bump it over to you and I'm going to mute.
So thanks, Beth. And so when you look at what's on the screen here in front of you too, this might immediately come off as, yep, check, check, check. I have all of these things already included in my profile. So that's why we've really appropriately titled the slide Profile Basics. When you think about LinkedIn and you think about what you see on people's pages, these are all the key elements, the essential main headers, section headers that are in each profile. However, not everybody is always utilizing them to their fullest extent. So this slide is really twofold. One, to make sure that people are really thinking about, do I have each of these sections clearly completed and filled out and labeled on my profile? If not, you want to make sure that you go ahead and do those. LinkedIn offers a fantastic way of profile efficiency, profile builder, where it'll actually walk you step by step and show you a little progress bar to show how effective your profile is based on how many of these sections you've completed. So you want to make sure that you have your URL, which again, I'll go into in a few moments, name, picture, headline, location. Statistically, profiles with pictures, with headshots, are more likely to generate engagement than those without. We're human beings. We're interested in seeing each other. So if people send a connection and it doesn't have a profile picture attached to it, who are you? What's going on? Do I accept this? Do I not accept this? So statistically, profile pictures are more apt to generate connections. In addition to that, we are 80% more likely to remember what we see and 20% likely to remember what we read. So really making sure that your LinkedIn profile has that appropriate balance of imagery and text is going to be really important to making sure that you're making that impact on the audience. That impact in memory also comes again with what you're writing a little bit as well too. So talking about your experience, your summaries, about sections, we'll get into all those a little bit more in detail. But again, at a minimum, you want to make sure you at least have all of these profile sections complete and up to date. Some of these profile sections can even be drilled down a little bit further. And sometimes people don't realize that. So when you think about going to add profile section and then about or skills and endorsements, oftentimes there's little subsection headers that get hidden in there that you might want to make sure that you're reading through and thinking, do any of these apply to me? Do I have anything else that I can add in there to make this profile more robust? I was actually just working with an individual about 2 weeks ago, who we were working on converting a CV to a resume and also starting to build their LinkedIn presence. And on the CV, we realized that the individual had some patents that they were very proud of, and they were applying for a position in the tech world where these patents could be particularly impressive, yet they didn't have them anywhere on their LinkedIn profile. So we drilled down further when we realized that under additional information section, there was in fact a patent opportunity in there. So I encourage this individual to go ahead and include those patents on LinkedIn profile, because now they become searchable criteria. They give your audience is and people who might want to connect with you, be it employers or just other alumni or anybody else, more information to gather about you that might pique their interest. For example, employers are constantly utilizing LinkedIn to do candidate searches. The way we might be conducting job searches, they're doing candidate searches. And if they don't immediately have their resume, your resume present in front of them, they might not know you have all these fantastic patents, but absolutely including it on this LinkedIn profile shows that it demonstrates and is more likely to bring people into you and demonstrate that interest and that presence that you're hoping will come across. So now the idea of a little bit more of going into, I think we need to just go one more slide further, Beth, and how do we actually start demonstrating all this information to our users? Well, this is where we want to start thinking a little bit more at the very basic, your profile. What are people seeing about you? What are they learning about you? So you can see here on this screen, Beth and I are showing two different versions of what our home profiles look like. At a bare minimum, you want to make sure that your profile is displaying some of the information you're seeing as far as name, possibly credentials, headlines, messaging, welcome messaging. So the way that you can really go ahead and do this is looking at the differences here. Mine, I've chosen to have more focused based on my industry, my interest, presenting just me from a company standpoint. So you can see here how I have my name and credentials listed on there. People immediately can see me, they can see my resume certification as outlined on there, compared to if you see Beth's choosing to just go straight with her name and also including her maiden name in there. Including the maiden name is a fantastic way to build connections, specifically for some of you who maybe have gotten married or divorced or just changed names in general, either at some point between careers or maybe from the time of graduation to today. It helps other people find you if they've only known you under one name. For example, everybody here at UConn knows me as KRISTEN Soprano. A lot of people from my old company still know me as KRISTEN Zimmerman, my maiden name. So my professional identity has even changed from the two industries I've worked in. So really making sure that if you want people to be associated or be able to find both your professional identities that may have existed at some point, having that as an option is there for you. You can also think about looking at the idea of various locations. So for mine, I have on here, and it's just hard to see, but I have Greater Hartford. I believe, Beth, that's what you also have for yours as well. Where this can be helpful is letting people know where you are, either from a just general, hey, here's where I am. I might have great connections within this greater landscape area for people looking for the job search. Maybe you're planning on relocating. So maybe you're thinking of doing a, job search in San Antonio. Changing your location to San Antonio will not only help you start to build connections in that area, but it'll start getting you in front of the idea of recruiters and companies that might also be in that area and doing their own searches on that end. It's also a fantastic tool where if you're planning on traveling or again, relocating to connect with UConn alumni. We all know that we are spread across all over the country. So if you're starting to develop networks in different areas for various reasons, the location change on your profile can be very helpful as well. You'll also notice on mine with the recorded message, LinkedIn has this fantastic new feature where you can actually record a message that people can play when they access your profile. Not many people know about this. And the reason not many people know about this is because one of the many LinkedIn quirks that we want to question, but we don't dare question, is you can only add this recorded, essentially message from the phone app. So you can't record it from a computer. If you don't have LinkedIn on your phone for whatever reason, you will not be able to record these messages. But these messages can be very beneficial if maybe you are somebody who has a name that is on a daily mispronounced and you want to be able to, if you want to be able to allow people to understand how to properly say your name. We've even seen some people record greeted messages. So maybe you have a job title or summary that really doesn't quite grasp what people are understanding, or people just can't wrap their heads around it. Giving a little brief explanation of who you are and what you do can be helpful. So it allows you to customize that profile and make it a little bit more personal. The idea of the banners that you have on there, these are also a great ways to showcase your personality, your career interests. You can see how I've affiliated mine here directly with the university. I do that as a proud alum. I also do that as a proud staff member working here. So that shows my affiliation there, where you can see on Beth's end, she's chose to have the little frame of the head mind bookshelf with the books there. This helps, you know, kind of again, show a little bit of that personality, show a little bit of that whimsy, also show off some of Beth's personal side. So not only does she enjoy reading, but it also alludes to some of her volunteer activities, which we'll get to a little bit down the road in a few slides as well. We also have the idea of our headline. So mine just speaks to my direct position here. Some people may just want to have individuals know what they do and where they do it, where you can see Beth has expanded upon that a little bit. Beth has chosen to provide a little bit more insight into what her job title means and the services she provides, the support she provides, what her real skills are, as opposed to just the job title. You figure it out, you decipher it yourself. That is going to be the quick snippet that people are going to see when they look at you. So it's often really that point, the point of how do I want people to immediately identify me when they're doing searches. The profile status is also something that is interesting and can be changed. If you look at Beth's profile there, she has that nice little lavender streak going across her circle there that says she's hiring. That was something that Beth posted when our office had some current job openings available and says, hey, essentially, I'm hiring. Even though she's not hiring, it shows that, hey, me or an affiliation that I'm a part of is hiring. Talk to me about this opportunity. If you're somebody who's interested in the industry I work in, or if you're somebody who maybe has an interest about this industry, talk to me, because let's talk about these opportunities. This is also great for recent grads or individuals looking to maybe make a career change or re-enter the workforce. There's all different types of information about now open to networking. I just want to learn more. Now open to, sometimes there's recruiting for recruiters who utilize LinkedIn. So playing with these different status updates can be really helpful too. That kind of ties into the idea of job opportunities. So if you look at Beth's, the bottom of her profile there, it shows exactly what she's hiring for. So hiring career consultant, and that will show you some of those positions that might be available. And those notifications can be changed. So they can say open to work, open to hiring, open to networking, a lot of different status updates that will change over time. Now, this is what we talked about on the profile basics. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide, but if there's one lesson you walk away with today with this presentation, it is please, please, please customize your URL. It is probably the simplest thing to do on LinkedIn and probably the most overlooked. Where this really comes in handy is just showing your professional presence. You might choose to put your LinkedIn URL on a business card or on your resume or many other different personal marketing and branding places. But what most people don't know is that when you create a LinkedIn profile, it generates a generic URL. And often that has a random strings and numbers and letters and characters after it. So if you just copy and paste that URL, that's what goes onto those documents. You can, with 2 clicks of your mouse, go ahead and customize that LinkedIn URL to make sure that it's saying like linkedin.com/KRISTEN Soprano /BETH. And you can play around with that. Sometimes it might be difficult if you have a name that is very common, like Joe Smith. There are many Joe Smiths that exist on LinkedIn. So you might have to get creative and think, can I do J Smith? Can I do Joe S? Can I do J Smith 19? So you might have to get a little creative that, but any takeaways you take today, please make sure you're customizing your LinkedIn profile.
All right, so along those lines, going into the back end a little bit, let's talk about privacy. So in this day and age, right, privacy is more pertinent than ever. So what you want to be able, what we encourage you to do is go into your LinkedIn. When you go to your profile, then you click the section that says settings and privacy. And as you see on this middle column here, there are 6 different categories, and you'll honestly want to spend some time and go through each one. So what we've highlighted here is just one small element of it, where you'll go into the visibility of profile network and you can decide who sees what. So I think about this from an identity theft perspective. How much information do I want to put out there? How much information should be public versus getting people only people that know me kind of will know about it. So like from our colleague Steve, he has said everything about his name and headline can go to whomever, but then you can see private profile characteristics and private mode. So you can click how you want to be seen. I do want to say, as I was re-researching some of this for the presentation today, I looked in the advertising data section and I updated all my advertising data because a lot of it was irrelevant and my information was being shared with organizations and content that made no sense to my work. I really don't have a problem with my content being shared in the world of working, right, in the sense of being a career educator, but I really don't want my information going to, let's say, the sailing and boating industry. I don't do that. It's not relevant to my world. So I went through and checked all that stuff. So definitely to give yourself half hour to an hour, go through all your preferences, just make sure that it is what you want it to be. In this section too, you can indicate when you make updates. Sometimes updates go to everyone, sometimes they don't. So if I'm just rewriting my about section because I'm in the mood to change it up a little bit, I don't need everyone who's a connection to know I did that. But as I said earlier with the award, let's say I change my about section to announce a new initiative that I'm doing, or I am job searching, or I am seeking a partner for something. I might make that open to everyone so my connections know, oh, I made a change that's noteworthy. So a lot of that you'll find in those privacy settings. So just make sure you've made some time in that. A quick tip, if you would like to see what your profile looks like to others, or you want to check out other people's profile and not have them know you are doing it, you need to log out of LinkedIn completely, then go into the cognito mode in the internet browser you use, and then type in the name to search, whether it's your own or somebody else. And then LinkedIn often comes up, and pretty quickly you click on that, click full profile. You can then see how others see you, or you can check out whomever it is you're doing your research on. I'm not going to use the word stalking. You can check them out a little bit and just have a sense, because there are times where you might want to research a competitor or look at a potential future employer, and you don't want them to know you are looking at their profile because you're concerned about the optics. So the cognito mode certainly gives you some options there. Alrighty. So when you're writing that about section, you are going to think about how it appears. When it shows up in the profile, only the first 3 or 4 lines of text appear. So those are those grabber lines. So think back to those history and English and all those papers you wrote in college, that intro paragraph, like what are you doing to grab the reader? Think of when you interview either as a candidate, or if you are someone who, if you're interviewing and it's the tell me about yourself section, that's this about. So you want to grab the reader. Now, I think a good length is about 2 paragraphs. That's a personal preference. Mine is actually 3 or 4 short paragraphs because I'm not at all job seeking. It's more just, hey, this is me. And I absolutely talk too much and I like context. So it is impossible for me to cut it down. But I do recommend for most people about 2 paragraphs. And again, those first few lines are the grabber lines. You'll use keywords, you might outline your goals, you can do it in bullet style, you can do it in paragraph style. First person writing absolutely can appear more authentic, and that can be done with I, blah, 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 or it can be in bullet structure. You can also do it in third person. I don't recommend using pronouns though. So if I was talking about myself, I mean, I would not use Beth has done this or she has done this. That can read quite awkwardly, almost like a press release that someone else has written about you. I have seen it work if someone maybe is a public speaker and they're trying to promote themselves that way. Typically for us normal folk, regular folk, that isn't usually the case. So using I is fine, using bullets is fine, using sentences, paragraphs, etc., all okay. We want you to be you, and it should replicate how you are. Again, it's your brand. Consider those key messages. Again, what do you want your readers to know? So if you are someone that is in, okay, so I use myself, so I am not job searching, but let's say I was, and I wanted to stay in the world of career, but maybe go to another school in the area. I would make sure my about section is quite focused in the career realm because that's my expertise. If I were to be job searching and looking in other areas, I might make my about section a little more general. I'd be doing a discrete search, so I wouldn't put blatantly open to new jobs or job searching. But think about, again, your short-term, your long-term goals. LinkedIn can be as general or as specific as you want. When you start making changes, big changes, and your connections are aware of that, it could signal someone that something's going on. So be strategic when you think about that key message that you want to get across. And just also, you want to make sure that the information that you put on is in alignment with your other sections. So you display information that may not align with other sections too. So if Chris, I'll use the patents, for example, there is a patent section in LinkedIn. There's no need to replicate the information in your about section. Maybe an exception would be is if you are applying to work for a job that absolutely is all about patents, then maybe you can refer to yourself as a patent expert, but use the about section strategically so you're not wasting words. And because LinkedIn does give so many sections, research them before you maybe write your about section last, right? Like fill out all your other sections first and then take that step back and say, who am I and who do I want the world to know I am? Who I am. All right, and back to Chris.
So now the experience section is hopefully something that we're all pretty familiar with, right? This is essentially the resume portion of our LinkedIn profiles. And really why we want to tap upon this today is really just to speak about the different ways the experience section can be utilized. A lot of times people think, I just need to get information in there because I'm looking for a job and I need to, again, do that more resume-based approach. That's not necessarily true. Building out an experience section is not just for finding jobs. Building out an experience section is, again, for what Beth alluded to before, being able to show how you can be of support to other people, how you might be able to help somebody else based on your current or past experience as well. And there's lots of different ways that an experience section can look. And this profile we have on the screen here, and we should point out that all the examples that we're showcasing today in this profile are all UConn alum. So you're getting to see the various different ways UConn alum are choosing to manipulate their individual profiles. But for this particular one that we're showing here with the experience section, you can see a little bit more, one, about an individual's job progression. So if you're somebody who's just curious to know a little bit about, oh, what are other people from my graduating class doing? How their career paths looked? Maybe you want to look at an old classmate of yours and figure out, you know what, they were really bright in class. What have they gone on to do? You can look them up on LinkedIn and you can see a little bit more of what their career progression has looked like. You can see different industries they've bounced around between, or, you know, the many successes that they've had in their job. So you can show a little bit more about the different ways and the different titles you've held with the same companies. You can also go ahead and list out various activities, projects, accomplishments you have within your experience section as well. So on here, you can see how there's two specific articles or two specific attachments that are included in here. These happen to be specific articles in which this individual had contributed to, or that this individual was mentioned in, or highlights the work that this individual was a part of. So calling those out are a great way to say, not just here's what I do, but look at the impact what I have is doing. It goes back again to that idea of the humble brag we talked about a little while ago, and being able to say, look at these great things I'm doing. Look at the impact I'm making to my industry, or look at the recognition that I'm being given by my fellow industry professionals. So it's a great way to throw in that extra humble brag that really makes somebody connect the ideas. This experience section could be very robust. It could be very vague. That's really all where it's up to you. So that's where you can choose to write out a paragraph summary based off of a little bit more about maybe the summarization of your work or the summarization of your company. This is where you can choose to write it specifically like a resume with different bullets that say, well, I'm responsible for this. In addition, I oversee that. It really, again, depends on your own personal preference. There is no real wrong or right way to do it. You just really want to think about, what is my purpose of utilizing LinkedIn at this particular point, and who is the audience I'm primarily hoping is going to be reading this at the moment. So again, if you are using LinkedIn for job searching, this is where maybe you do want to call out more attention to those accomplishments or those skill sets that you have. If you're somebody who's just looking to say, look, I love my job, I love my industry, I love my profession, I want to showcase that to the world, and I also want to be available to be of assistance, that's where you might choose to do more summarization. It is really up to you. You also want to think a little bit more about what Beth was just saying before about not necessarily changing it one day and then immediately job searching the next day, right? Because again, that could raise suspicions if you are using it for a job search process, but hoping to do that on the sneak, right? That's where it should be thinking about maybe a slow rollout, slow play that job search process. I'm just making these updates because I want to showcase the work that I'm doing. I'm proud of the work I do, but secretly I'm also updating these because I want people to be attracted to some of the things that I'm doing. So Beth, if you want to go to the next slide, we also want to talk about the idea of making sure that you're including education licenses and certifications. So again, this is where it comes down to the idea that some people will only choose to incorporate those licenses or certifications or additional education they've received that is directly relevant to what they are currently doing. Again, LinkedIn is meant to show the many different ways of support that you can offer your network. So if you look at the individual we're showcasing here, again, UConn alum, you can see how they do have some certifications that are listed first that directly correlate with their job, their current role within the insurance industry. That focuses specifically on their ability to perform their role. But then if you also look at some of the other certifications they have below that, they're a certified ski instructor. They are also a Connecticut Justice of the Peace. What a great way to be able to showcase to UConn alum. How many times do we see members of our foundation posting pictures on the UConn alumni Instagram of UConn weddings and the UConn pride that's exhibited in all those wedding pictures, right? What a fantastic way to be able to go and say, you know what? I'm getting married. I exhibit that UConn pride. I wonder if there's any UConn alums that are just the pieces that we can tap into. This could potentially be a great way to utilize the alumni search feature, which again, we'll talk about in a little bit, and maybe build those connections with other UConn alum and really keep that special to you. Or maybe you're just somebody who said, you know what, I've always wanted to take ski lessons. And oh, look, this person is also a UConn alum. Maybe I can strike up some great conversation with them as I'm falling down the mountain. And I use the term falling accordingly because that would be me. Really making sure that you're highlighting both the demographics of personal and professional, if you choose, can be beneficial. We'll now also get into the idea of skills and endorsements. So this is a great example, this slide here, of how we were talking about LinkedIn is constantly changing. Beth and I just built this slide deck about a week ago. And it was just a few days ago after constructing this slide that we went back in and we realized, the skills and endorsements section doesn't look like this anymore. LinkedIn updated it. So if you're looking at your own LinkedIn profile right now, you might see a different appearance, and that's okay. But really what we wanted to show you here is the idea of how expansive these sections should look. A lot of times people think about just putting in those high level skills. So, oh, I've got customer service skills, or, oh, I've got, Microsoft Excel skills or great interpersonal skills. Build that out a little bit more. Again, all of these skills that you're putting on here, these become searchable features for people to find you, whether that's employers, whether that's just connections. It also shows the robustness of what you bring to an individual, and quite honestly, what you've learned. It's another opportunity to have a humble brag and to say, look at all these amazing skills that I have that can be beneficial in a multitude of different ways. So as you look at this, you can also see everything from specific aspects of financial analysis. They also then speak to the specific technologies they might have used within that financial analysis. So very high level as well as drilled down level. That's what you want to focus on. And if you look at the little numbers associated next to each of those skills as well, those are in fact the endorsements that people are getting for these skills. So these are people who are looking at profiles and saying, yep, I agree that this individual has excellent financial analysis skills. So when people are looking at your profile and they're trying to judge your subject matter expertise, wow, this individual, 52 people have endorsed this financial analysis skill for this individual. That's fantastic. They must really know their stuff. They must be a great subject matter expert. Let me ask my question. Let me pick their brain on something. It's also important that when you think about how you're displaying this information to people, you really think about, how am I customizing my top 3 skills? Unfortunately, LinkedIn limits you to just 3 skills. And it's hard to narrow it down to 3 because there are so many that could be relevant at any given time. It's like trying to pick a favorite child. We all know we have one if you have children, but how do you really list it, right? So that's where you think about, what do I want people to know about me at the early onset that's going to make them want to say, great, show me more. How do we think about those top 3 based on purpose of your profile? And then go from there. Don't be afraid to build those out. Getting recommendations, which I think we also talk about on the next slide. Beth will go into that in a second, but then how the idea of these can also be further expanded upon in those recommendations.
There's always a little lag when I hit, Chris, I know I'm supposed to move the thing and I hit the button and then it pauses, and I don't want you to think that I'm not, attentive to moving it. All right, so recommendations. So recommendations have significant more value than those endorsements. Endorsements and skills are essential for a robust LinkedIn profile. Recommendations elevated even higher. See, Josh, I used the word elevate. All right, so with recommendations, you can do a few things. You can give recommendations, and I encourage you to give them generously, freely. They need to be sincere, of course. LinkedIn does not like it if Chris and I all of a sudden recommend each other and they both show up. That doesn't always fly so great. So we want to make sure that it's not at the exact same time that you and a coworker maybe are giving each other recommendations, because then it kind of cancels each other out. You want to find people that you've worked on a project with, maybe a past supervisor, maybe a current supervisor. On mine, I have a student who's now an alum who wrote about working with me. So in Lisa's one of our colleagues and a UConn alum. Lisa's recommendations, she's received 5, 2 of them from someone who works in the advising office over in bio, and Kelsey is a former colleague of ours in the Career Center and now works for another department at UConn. So you want to think about people who really genuinely know you. And recruiters know this, that recommendations tend to be from people who are well known. Again, LinkedIn is more than just a job search tool. So if you are hiring, how great is it that you might have recommendations that speak to your work ethic, to your integrity. If you are looking to collaborate with someone, again, it goes back to giving a sense of who you are. Now, when you ask for a recommendation, you'll go into your profile, you'll go into add section, you'll click on recommendation, and it says request, and it takes you either type in the person's name and it goes there. You can also just go straight to their profile and you can request straight from them. So one of mine, for a while, I very much wanted to get the word out about me and public speaking. So I asked a colleague who ran a program for a while on our campus where I would come in every semester and speak to a large class once or twice on 1 or 2 topics. And so I asked Dan specifically to speak to my ability to speak well, to be articulate, to get the point across. Hopefully that's still the case, and I'm doing that. If I want to, I'll shout out Chris for a moment. Chris mentioned that she is a certified professional resume writer. I have been doing resumes for 20 plus years now. I will go to Chris and say, Chris, what's the latest on this? What's your thoughts on this? So it'd be very appropriate for me as a coworker to recommend Chris and her profile as someone who I trust with good resume advice. So we definitely can utilize each other that way. Chris, I will do that now that I put it out there. So no need to, I will make sure to do that. So recommendations are wonderful, and I greatly encourage you to give freely and appropriately ask. I also find it's helpful when you do ask someone to give a specific topic, because if I had gone to Dan and said, Dan, can you write me a LinkedIn recommendation? I think he would have done it. It might have touched on elements that I didn't value or I didn't think were important. So it absolutely is okay to say, so-and-so, would you be able to write a recommendation about this project that we worked together, or this skill that I have demonstrated? Another area that you can highlight yourself are your accomplishments. So when Chris and I were looking up alum and looking at our own and whatnot, we found quite a few alum who still had their college information on here, their undergrad information. And so when was the last time you updated your profile, right? If you are someone that graduated in the last 5 years, do you still have your cap and gown picture as your profile photo? So make sure LinkedIn is something you want to update probably a few times a year just to make sure it is relevant. That's different than activity, and that is stuff that we'll talk about in a little bit. So with your accomplishment, now certainly you can include a course. Like for instance, our colleague has here 60-hour career coaching certification program. That is something that Lisa did while working for us as a full-time employee. That is not something that was done as an undergrad. Same thing. So all these projects are either at the master's level or full-time. We talked about earlier the patents. If you know other languages, by all means, you can highlight it here. That could also go in the about section if you think that is noteworthy for the purpose of your LinkedIn profile. We'll keep coming back to that. Why do you have a profile? What's the message you want to send? So when you go into your sections, add profile section, you click on accomplishments, you will see all these options. And then we just pulled out a few to show how it looks. So again, take some time. It can be a little overwhelming to think, oh my God, there's so much in LinkedIn. How do I do it all? Maybe devote 1 hour a week to your LinkedIn profile for the next 6 weeks and make this a priority. Think of it that way. You know, on your lunch break, if you're able to take a lunch break, give yourself some professional time and upgrade. And again, you can do it in a way that nobody else knows you're working on it, so they're not getting constant notifications. Chris mentioned my volunteerism earlier. So on my header, I have books because I love reading. I love talking about books, book recommendations. That Josh, can we please have a book Elevate series? Okay, I have proposed that. Always says no. Just teasing Josh. I like people to know that I'm involved in books. So I didn't have it on this screenshot, but I do. Yeah, I'm a board member of my town Friends of the Library. So I've been an active volunteer. I hold a board position as secretary, and I explain what they do. I also am very involved in cat adoptions through an organization out by the airport. If anyone's looking to adopt a cat, PM me privately. I'm on the board there, extremely involved. Those are my passion projects right now. I love my job. I've chosen to use my time outside of work in these two volunteer areas, especially as my kids have gotten older and I'm filling up some time. However, 8 years ago, I was involved in CEIA as an officer on their professional board. And then I stepped away from that about 2014, 2016. So maybe not 8 years ago, 6 years ago. I'm still a member, I'm still on some committees, but I'm not at the high level. I'm also not looking at this point in my career trajectory to move up. And let's say I wanted to become a director of a career center at a smaller college. I would absolutely put much more time into my professional associations, and that is what I would list first in my volunteer experience. But that's not where I am at this point in my life. I used to have it first, I have reorganized it. So keep the volunteer experiences in mind, and you can put up as much or as little as you'd like. All Chris.
So now we'll talk a little bit more about the interests. So these interests can stem a little bit more from those volunteer activities that you just talked about. These can also stem from your professional interests. They can also just stem from personal curiosity interests as well too. But really what interests allow you to do is gain knowledge, gain insight into many different things. And the way LinkedIn breaks down interests, you can see, is into 4 main categories: influencers, companies, groups, and schools. So influencers are really more of those exact what they are. They're social media, industry related influencers that you can follow that share a lot of great information that might be relevant to your business needs. They might be relevant to your own personal needs. For instance, I follow influencers like Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank, who does a lot of focus specifically with business, women in business, financial literacy for women. So there's a lot of information that's shared through there. There's also a lot of great career influencers that I follow as well. So many different LinkedIn influencers that you can actually get on and follow. Companies is another great one to follow. And if you look at the larger screenshot we have at the bottom there from this alum, where you see Lego and a few schools in there, these are what immediately show available on your profile. So when you think about listing your interests, it's only a quick snippet that shows on your profile. And you can see at the very bottom of the slide there, and in the little gray bar, it says see all. That's where people are going to go to be able to drill down and see, what else are you interested in? What else do you follow? That's again where they're going to see what influencers, what companies, what groups, what schools. So this individual happens to work in recruiting. So they have a lot of not only companies and interests that appear based on the companies that they work for, but also different various industries, various different groups that focus specifically on hiring goals. They also have focus on some schools that they follow and they primarily recruit from. When you click on see all, you can see off to the right-hand side there, that's where the full group of all your interests start to show. This is again where you can show your interests in various different activities, your various different personal and professional interests. This is also where you can showcase interests in schools. Maybe you want to follow the University of Connecticut. Maybe you're an undergraduate alum of the University of Connecticut and you went to a master's program elsewhere. This is where you can follow those other institutions and keep up with what other alum are doing there, or what other, newsworthy events are happening with those institutions. Some pros to that are that, again, it helps connect you to individuals. Some cons to that could be that it also maybe shows your hand in maybe some interests that you have for using LinkedIn at the moment. So again, following companies. A pro might be your follow. If you're in the insurance industry, let's just look at the example on the screen here. Maybe you work for the Hartford, and I say this as a former Hartford employee, so I feel okay saying this, that I might also follow Travelers because maybe I'm interested in knowing what Travelers is doing, what new products they're rolling out, what amazing things they're doing with their interns, because maybe there's something I want to steal to elevate my intern program and make my intern program more attractive to college students as I'm thinking about recruiting strategies. So that's where following some other companies in your industry can be helpful. Again, a con is if you're using this for job searching, depending upon how you have your privacy settings laid up, if your boss happens to go on there and say, oh, you're also following Travelers, you're also following Aetna, you're also following, MetLife, what's going on here? Why are you following all these other things? Like, are you starting to look? What is your purpose of going there? So again, pros and cons to knowing who you're following and what you're doing just based on who's looking at your profiles. Now, when we get into the next idea, also in the interest of groups, I want to drill down into this a little bit further because there's a couple different ways that you can think about utilizing groups. So there are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of groups that exist on LinkedIn. Some are they have a lot of members, they're very large, they're very well known. Some are very smaller groups, and you might see they might only have 13 members. Those might be either ones that aren't in existence anymore. I really don't know how LinkedIn monitors the various groups that they have on there. It could, in fact, be just a small group because it's very niche. But when you think about groups, these are really helpful in really building connections, but more importantly, building connections based on interests and potentially hobbies, not just necessarily on work. So this is really where you have that idea of private messaging and private interest being shared outside of the large newsfeed that is LinkedIn. This is where you can go and have more tailored conversations, gain more tailored information about one particular topic, as opposed to everything coming in all together at once. There's also a really cool loophole that exists with being a part of a group where LinkedIn, based on the different categories of connections they have, first, second, and third, depending upon your level of connection with somebody, you may not be able to directly message them. So if you are a third connection to somebody, LinkedIn does not let you send a direct message unless you've already connected. Some people don't feel comfortable doing that. However, the loophole exists. If you and that individual are in the same group, you may still be a third connection, but because you're in the group, you can message them directly through the group. So sometimes being a member of a group, in addition to getting lots of great information, kind of helps you beat the LinkedIn rules a little bit. And we're all rule breakers at heart. So, so that's another great thing to think about with that. On to activity. This is just really a snapshot of letting people see how involved you are with LinkedIn. I always say to students that I'm working with in the undergraduate realm when they're first learning about LinkedIn, it's not a set it and forget it tool. So for those of you who may remember the old Roncari rotisserie chicken infomercial, set it and forget it, this is not that, right? LinkedIn is meant to be something that's meant to be engaged with, that's meant to be utilized even for just a few minutes a day. The more active you are on LinkedIn, the more likely you are to essentially become a face on the LinkedIn platform, to have people, whether you intend them to or not, know who you are, to become maybe an influencer yourself in some ways. This can be extremely helpful, again, with just building connections. People start to see the usage of your profile, how much you share, how much you write, how much you engage, and they think, this is somebody who gets it. This is somebody who knows it. So this is somebody that's maybe more worthwhile talking to than somebody who doesn't have a lot of activity on the platform. Activity is also really great because if you are a job seeker and you're applying for a specific company and you say to that company, you're my #1 choice, I woke up always wanting to work in this industry, that recruiter is going to call your bluff on that. And they're going to essentially say, okay, yeah, show me. They're going to go look at your activity profile and they're going to go on there and say, wow, you're right. Look at all these posts. Look at how you're engaging with all these different members who work at my company. Look at how you're engaging with our corporate media releases that we're doing. Look how you're always, contributing thoughts about these new advancements that are being made. So your activity is really important when you think about it. Again, it's not just activity of, oh, I created a post, but it's how else are you engaging with other posts? Are you liking posts? Are you adding comments? All of that is very important. Also, when you think about the idea of connecting, we've alluded to connecting a lot. I told you if there's one thing you walk away with today's presentation from, it's customizing URL. The second thing that you need to walk away with from today is sending personalized connection requests. So many people just think it is simply okay to hit the connect button and then move on and say, great, they'll accept it, no problem. I will be honest, I do not accept any connection requests from people that send them to me unless they are customized. I get so many people sending me connection requests, but there's no personalized message, and I do not accept them because, again, going back to that human curiosity, I want to know why you want to connect with me. There are a lot of people that unfortunately will utilize LinkedIn for not so great purposes. They simply just want to get to you to get to your connections. There's a lot of people in the sales world that utilize that. There's a lot of people who try to market their own business. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Some of you on this call might very well do that yourselves, and that's okay. But for me personally, I don't want my LinkedIn profile to be used that way. So I want to know if people are reaching out to me and they're interested in connecting with me. Why? Why are you interested in me? Why did you stumble across my profile? All it has to be is 1 or 2 sentences, but then I will accept that connection. So just make sure that you are customizing that, not using the generic one that appears. But, if I was sending a connection message to Josh, I might say, hey, Josh, saw you also an alumni of the University of Connecticut, go Huskies. I'm just moving into the world of higher ed and returning to UConn as a staff member, would love to connect and start building my connections on campus. Send, right? Can be short, quick, to the point. I had somebody once reach out to me on LinkedIn that I didn't know, who was also somebody who worked in the insurance industry and was looking to make a career change to higher ed. They sent me a message and said, Kristen, I saw you recently made this transition. I'm interested to know what your perspectives are on the difference between industry and higher ed. Would you be willing to talk with me for 30 minutes? Absolutely did. Complete stranger, no shared connection between us at all, but other than the fact that they were looking to do something I did, and I was happy to offer my own perspective and advice. So again, the customized message is important. Make sure you are doing that.
A colleague who used to work for UConn now works for another institution. He and I debated a number of years ago about reaching out to total strangers versus reaching out to people you know. And for a long time, I was truly only connecting people who were a first or a second. And I have expanded that. I will do kind of what Chris just said. There still has to be a purpose. I won't just pick a random person and connect. And if someone just randomly chooses me, like Chris, I either decline or I ignore. So again, make sure you use that send option. We've also found that when people do it from a mobile device, it doesn't always give you the chance. So I always encourage the individuals I work with to do it actually from a PC or a Mac, you know, never mind the name brand, do it from a computer, not from a mobile device. Alrighty, just a quick note, there's a half dozen or so questions in the chat that we are going to answer during the Q&A section. We don't want you to think that you are being forgotten. I know some of the alumni team, foundation team are answering some, and then some will be available to Chris and I towards the end of the presentation. Alrighty, so we've talked about alumni, we've talked about reaching out. How do you find them? So many different reasons why you might want to connect. Chris and I and our colleagues often use the alumni search tool when we're doing presentations like this. We might say, I'm doing a presentation. For example, I have one coming up for our current graduating seniors. I'm doing a presentation on relocating, and I'll be looking for some alumni to talk about what was it like after they graduated, they chose to relocate within the state, out of the country. Another one, I'll be looking for some recent alum about their first year after graduation, because our outgoing graduating class, I know, has questions. What's it like to graduate during a pandemic? What would I need to know? So I'll use LinkedIn to maybe find some alum. That's just one way. So the way you'll start searching, you'll go into the search engine, you'll type in University of Connecticut. As you can see, there's a number of different LinkedIn groups, or I think groups is the right term here, that you can join, you can follow. You can certainly join more than one. I am a member of this first one, the company higher ed, but if I maybe was a School of Business graduate, I might also want to be part of the business one. Or if I wasn't a School of Business graduate, but I wanted to work in the world of business and I wanted to make connections with other like-minded folks, I might join that group as well. So when we did the search, I came up with 165,000 alumni. It's funny, when Chris and I first did this and had the screenshot, it said 161,000. And then I was doing my final notes and it jumped in a very short period of time up to 165,000. So that was pretty cool. So I updated this last week. When I put in the term, I put in a keyword. In this case, I did marketing, and all these different categories come up. Now, clearly, I cannot look at 160,000 people that live in the United States. And this marketing is not, the results that you see below are not as a result of putting in the word marketing. That'll be on the next slide. Also notice the start year and the end year. I don't know why they have the start year at 1900. I don't know if it's supposed to be a joke. I just think it's really odd that the start year is there, because realistically, someone can't use LinkedIn until they're, 13, which I think is a little young. So that would make the person, what, 130, 140. So anyway, make sure you put the start year at the year that you want it to be, because you can have a range. But you can search for alumni to learn about their backgrounds. I think the example Chris just gave is an amazing story, because you might do research on where you want your future to be, and you want to sort of, again, not stalk. You want to look up people's stories. Whether you contact them or not, you might want to look at what they did in order when they got to the position they're in. Where else did they work? Maybe you want to work at that same place and almost follow that trajectory. I give that advice to students all the time. Who has the aspirational position you want? Look to see how they got there. So I'll share that with you as well as alum. So we go into the search tool. I narrowed it down to 2000 to 2010. So I didn't want people who just graduated in the last year, but I wanted people who graduated 10 to 20 years ago, using that term marketing. Now it's down to 9,600 individuals. So still a large number, but certainly more reasonable to work from. So then from there, I could say, I'm thinking of moving to New London. So I might click this 230 right here and where they live, and I'll start narrowing it down a little bit more. Now there are sorry, I'm stumbling. There are other criteria. There's 6 altogether. You can see this next. So it's where they live, where they work, what they study, the type of work they do, etc. So you keep narrowing down and drilling down until you get a list that you think is a reasonable number. And you'll get a snapshot, I should slow down, of their bio. And then you can decide to learn a little bit more about them, and then potentially to connect or send them a message. Go back to that incognito function. That really does work. I personally like seeing people's career paths, so I enjoy just looking on LinkedIn sometimes just to see where people have gone, what they're doing. If you are hiring and you have a small business and you don't have that recruiting team, this is another great way. You could put in search tool to maybe find, you could potentially headhunt a little bit. Alumni search tool is fabulous. And Chris brought up earlier with our example, the person who was a ski instructor. Honestly, it would not occur to me to go to LinkedIn to find a justice of the peace or a notary or a ski instructor, but they're there, right? So take advantage of all the different ways you can find other alum. And maybe you'll find your freshman year roommate that you lost touch with and you'd like to reconnect with because you want to apologize for locking them out. True story. All right, in here, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the job search. So again, you can do a job search if you like through LinkedIn. You can apply for jobs. Absolutely appropriate. I also always encourage people when they apply to jobs to apply directly through the organization's main website, just to make sure it got received. But you can, what's kind of cool is you can see sometimes in the job tool, this says 3 applicants. So it lets you know some other people have applied. So again, I use the marketing search tool as a moment. I could set alerts for myself if I want to get information on new jobs. There's probably ways to go into depth about that. We could have done a whole presentation on LinkedIn, just the job search. That is not what we're doing today. So we're just touching on it. You can certainly talk to Josh is going to talk to you some more about working with John Brady if you'd like to do more LinkedIn stuff. So hang on for that information. So you can apply through LinkedIn, you can use your contacts to learn more about the roles. You can see if other people from UConn work there. So for example, down here, it says 7 company alum work here. So maybe I'm curious about brokerage marketing. I'm not sure I want to apply yet. I'm not sure this is the right job, but I want to learn about the culture of the organization. Absolutely. I would click on this 7 company alum, see if I know any of them, see if I feel comfortable reaching out and asking if they'd be comfortable chatting with me for 15 minutes, just a little bit more about the company. I would not ask these people to do recommendations, do endorsements, anything like that. I would not ask them to give me a referral. That would not be appropriate. But you might be able to get some inside scoop that would help you understand, is this a place you want to consider? So the job search tool is phenomenal. Definitely check it out if that's where you are in this process in your life. Alrighty, so we have some resources we want to share with you, and then we want to make sure we have time for those Q&A. And remarkably, Chris, we are exactly on time. I am so proud of us. So a colleague of mine I met a number of years ago in my internship work was moved back to the area of Connecticut and decided to become a small business, Sandra Long, and she did a number of career support for students and for colleges, and then found her niche with LinkedIn, and she does all sorts of trainings. She is an amazing person in LinkedIn. I highly, highly encourage you to look her up, to connect with her. She has a newsletter. She also has this book. I don't mean to do a shameless plug. She asked me to review it, so that's my notes. I'm giving it 4 out of 5 stars. I think it's got incredibly good information. It is a little full. Some of her text goes a little bit long. However, as you can see, and I felt myself not to be a LinkedIn expert, but definitely a confident UConn user, a confident LinkedIn user. And I still found many areas of new information. So whether you go for her book or just connect with her online or get her newsletter, I do recommend her book, or you can do other resources, of course. LinkedIn Premium, we get asked a lot about this from our students. Should I get LinkedIn Premium? Should I not? I think it's up to personal preference. I have not found a need for it myself. And Chris, I'd like you to pop in if you have any other thoughts, okay? You can certainly sign up, I think, for 30 days for free, so you can see if it's something that you want to do. I do believe corporate recruiters use LinkedIn Premium because they want to connect with people without limitations. But for the regular user, I have found LinkedIn Premium is not necessarily needed. LinkedIn Learning. Oh, Chris, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I would agree with that. When you upgrade to the LinkedIn Premium, there's not a whole host of options that you get more than what you already have. You're getting it's smidgen, I'd say, in my personal opinion, of an upgrade, but not enough to warrant the subscription to it. To Beth's point, recruiters will utilize it. However, a lot of recruiters will actually utilize LinkedIn Recruiting, LinkedIn Talent Solutions a little bit more. They tend to do it more from their corporate profiles. Again, I'm not going to go into that, but there's a whole host of different other ways that could be used from a recruiting perspective as well as a job search perspective that come along with that. It still does, eventually max you out at the number of views. I did see see a question come into the chat about can people see, can I see who's looking at my profile? Can people see who I'm looking at my profile? In short answer to that, yes, LinkedIn will give a notification, like I'm looking at mine right now, that says this individual and 3 others viewed your profile. But then right underneath that, it says try premium for free for 1 month. So it basically only regular LinkedIn notifies you people are looking at your profile, but doesn't necessarily say who is or show you who is. So if you have a lot of people looking at your profile, you have no clue who's looking at your profile unless you upgrade to that pay. So, and I don't know the demographics on how many people pay, but to answer that question that did come into the chat, that would really only be a way if people were paying that they would truly know every single person that was looking at their profile.
Right. I think if Chris looks at my profile, I think I'll know because we're first connections. But I think people you don't know, yeah, it is hidden. And there is somewhere in the system where you can say, I don't want anyone to see that I'm looking, but then of course you get no access to see who is looking at yours. So you can also turn off that function. Chris is going to talk more in a moment about the talent solutions. For LinkedIn Learning, it used to be called Linda with a Y, if anyone remembers that from a few years ago. There are a number of modules on there, including basic tutorials about LinkedIn. So if you want to do this at your own pace, definitely go into LinkedIn Learning. Those are all free. There are some LinkedIn Learning that are not free. Let's say you want to become more proficient in Excel and you decide to use LinkedIn Learning as a way. They are good videos, tutorials, etc. They do have fees attached to them. There are some other free systems like Khan Academy, which does not charge. So LinkedIn Learning is worth looking into and exploring it. And then you can decide if you want to pay for those features or not. If you're someone that maybe you love learning for learning's sake and you do not have the time or the funds to sign up for a class, maybe you are constrained at home and you can't go out to a local community college for 3 Wednesday nights, maybe LinkedIn Learning is the way you go, because you'll be able to do a self-paced tutorial and you'll be able to then maybe potentially give yourself some certificates and put that on your LinkedIn profile that you have become proficient in X. So LinkedIn has so many levels and layers, and definitely encourage you to look into them. Chris, why don't you talk to us a little bit more about the talent solution option?
Yeah, and so I'm just going to not even spend a lot of time on this, but the main reason I wanted to show everybody today was that there is a LinkedIn talent solution side of this platform, primarily used by recruiting professionals, hiring managers. This really allows people to think about how are we finding talent, how are we developing current talent, how are we improving the employee experience. So for those of you in those types of positions, this might be interesting for you, but for those of us who are just using LinkedIn for an everyday use, one of the coolest features that I like about Talent Solutions that's free for everybody to use is actually the idea of the LinkedIn interview question generator. I'm dropping the link into that to the chat right now, because this is helpful in a couple different ways. If you are somebody who is interested in applying for jobs or looking to make a career change or looking to, elevate your career in some way, the LinkedIn question generator is a great way to essentially do some interview practice on your own. Start to get used to the idea of what questions might be asked that are specifically assessing these type of skills, because maybe you've been out of the interviewing game for a while and you just want to get the dust off. Going in here could be a great way for you to start brainstorming some sample questions and start thinking about, oh, how would I answer this, right? So it's just a good idea for interview practice. This is also really good for maybe some of you small business owners or some of you who maybe are in some kind of hiring role, but aren't part of a larger talent team. This is a great set where if you're looking for a way to, say, how am I going to assess this talent, or what kind of questions should I be asking? This is a great way to go in and get some questions to ask for potential applicants as well.
Absolutely. I was just thinking the same thing. And I said this to some students yesterday in a class I teach, that an interview really ideally feels like a conversation, not an interrogation. So, and we know a lot of interviewers are not trained on how to interview, so use that talent generator. So we just wanted to let you know how to reach us. You can certainly find us on the Career Center website, and we're the only KRISTEN and BETH there. So KRISTEN with a K, there's a number of Chris's, but Chris is here is the only KRISTEN, and KRISTEN with a K. So you can reach out to us with individual questions later on. You can certainly, again, with a good connection, let us know that you loved our presentation and you'd like to connect with us, but you can also reach out to us through our website, etc. We have a few minutes left that we want to be able to speak to some of the questions. Josh, did you want to moderate that, or do you want us to just?
Sure, yeah, no, that's
okay.
no problem. I'll throw those out to you. This first one that came in, I'm going to preface here. One of the things that I think is important for everybody to know as well is that the Center for Career Development does provide resources available to all alumni. The majority of those services are available online, and I did drop the URL in there. I know Beth dropped it in there a minute ago as well. So if you find them on career.uconn.edu, you can access all of those online resources. For those of you that have graduated within the last 3 academic years, you have access to all resources, including services in terms of one-on-one counseling and coaching and things of that sort that you can take advantage of, and you can do that by contacting their office directly. The follow-up to that is the UConn Foundation has a partnership with a career management and consulting firm, ProTem Partners. For those of you who have participated in any Elevates in the past, we talk about this program. You get 90 minutes of a free consultation with a professional career coach, but beyond that, it is at a discounted pay for service that you are responsible for beyond that. But that resource is available to you. I hope you don't mind my saying this, Chris and Beth. Their program through the Center for Career Development is very much focused on getting students into the workforce and helping them be successful. The career coach that we partner with is very much for the career pivoters, changers, second act careers. It's a very different world in the career consulting space, from getting somebody into the workplace as a new professional to those that have 5, 10, 15, 30 years of experience. So I just want to preface with that. I hope that's okay to clarify there. This first question ties into this, which I think is perfect. The individual is talking about adding a second act career. They've been retired early. The challenge is they have a plethora of experience, but all of those that they may have worked with or volunteered with in the past have now since passed on. So who would they recommend for references in that scenario? I don't know if, Beth, this is the right question or if we should make this connection over to ProTem Partners, but I'll defer to you all first.
Sure, I'll start to answer. I definitely think John will be better, isn't the word I want to use because I don't want to knock myself down, but I think appropriate. But with that question, I would say continue to volunteer. You'll make some new connections. And I think you can also potentially, depending on the type of reference, use character references. So you may have some friends of the family, people who have known you for a number of years. I would not go with relatives. I think that can cross a fuzzy line. So that will be my gut reaction is continue to volunteer, continue to find people in the community that you're in, as well as your personal professional circle. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that I tend to recommend to folks in this type of scenario as well, is that you oftentimes can list colleagues or those that have volunteered with you as well. So very similar to what you were talking about, like a character reference in that sense. One person's talking about this, I think, Chris, goes back to when you talked about the different media aspects you can add in, additionally media coverage that might be there. How is there a headline that should be included, or do you just attach it to whatever relevant job that might be applicable?
Yeah, so LinkedIn really gives you a couple different ways to do stuff. So you can embed it into the actual experience, like that was shown in that slide that we were showing. There's also a section called featured that LinkedIn offers. So, you know, in that featured section, it falls, I'm looking at my profile right now, it falls just under the about section if you choose to include it in there. That's really a great opportunity for you also to show some of those. They don't necessarily come with headlines per se. So I think it really depends on which section that you are building it into. For example, in my featured section, I have the logo that goes with my resume writing certification there. And it's just something that gets embedded in there. And quite honestly, it's not something that even looks pretty because the logo doesn't fit in there nicely. But so you don't necessarily always need that headline to it.
Perfect, thank you. And one question did come in the chat from Joanne. I did just drop in there the link so that you can go to the Foundation's resources for career and professional resources that we have. In addition there, it does have the direct contact information for our partner with ProTem Partners. If you have trouble or need any of those types of things as well, you can feel free to email me directly. You all should have my contact from all the reminders and everything that have come through today. We're happy to facilitate those introductions as well, so keep that in mind. This goes out to all of the small business owners or even mid-sized, large-sized business owners that we have. This individual is talking about how do you attract new customers and how would you think about your profile and making sure it's catered that way. I think you've covered some of this in terms of the headhunting, but if there's any specific recommendations you might have.
Sure. So if you recall from our header, Chris chose to put career consultant. I think that actually does describe a lot of what Chris does, not everything, but it's a good title. My title is associate director. that just doesn't say anything about what I do, which is why I choose to use career educator. So I think if I were in a position where I wanted to potentially hire, I would talk about using, you can put under your name a number of phrases or words. So potentially you could put looking to hire, looking to engage in a robust workforce. Like you can just come up with a phrase. I would also use your about section a little bit more for that. And I believe you can put, just like I had, remember that looking to hire swoosh, or Chris, did you use the term swoosh? Maybe you used another term for the crescent. You can absolutely put that out, and you can have a link maybe to your organization's website, because it does like to connect to a website. So I would play around with it more. I would also maybe do some posts. You can put the word out with your connections. You can ask for referrals from people you know. I know if someone comes to me and says, I heard about you from a friend of mine, had a great experience, and that's why I'm here, that is so complimentary and makes me feel valued, that the person who I worked with, they listened, we developed a rapport, and then they recommended me. So I think if I was hiring, Chris runs our student intern program, and we definitely appreciate when we ask our current interns, can you please recommend someone, who you think would be a good fit for our organization? Referrals carry a lot of weight. So hopefully that spoke to the question. If not, you can always reach out privately, and I'll happy to explore it a little more, because I want to try to make sure we get to as many as we can.
Like everybody else, I get caught up in that muted button. I think even after all this time, we'd all just like figure this out. But anyways, thank you, Beth. I think that did hit the mark there. This one goes back to something Kristen mentioned a little earlier, where we're talking about how to list out all the different responsibilities that one might have in a role. Is it good to list out all of those things? Do you treat it like a resume, or do you narrow it down to certain bullet points, or do you just create a summary under each one, kind of summarizing everything you've done? You mentioned something about personal preference, but what would this team recommend?
Yeah, so again, I think it goes back to the idea of what are you trying to accomplish, right? Are you a job seeker? Are you just trying to share, again, that humble brag with everybody about everything you've done? So it really does come down to that personal preference and what is the point of your LinkedIn profile at this particular minute. If you've been in a particular, career for a while, or if you've been with a particular company and you've moved up the ranks quite a bit, I'll use my own example. When I was with the Hartford, when I first started at the Hartford, I started in a call center position, working in individual annuities with licensing and commissions. Later on into my career is when I started to move up into human resources, which then directly translated into my career of what I have now in career development. So I don't necessarily need to go in and list out bullets and responsibilities, or even a summary for that matter, of what I did in the call center. Knowing that I work in a call center, and that was clearly outlined in there, most people can have an understanding of what that meant, but it didn't, the fact of the matrices that I had to adhere, or the matrices I had to adhere to, or the information I knew about different commission structures, that really wasn't relevant in the personal persona that I was choosing to show on my LinkedIn profile. So again, it's an easy question to answer from a broad perspective, but a little harder to answer, because I just unfortunately don't know what this particular individual is really using their profile for. Beth, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to that.
No, I think you need to know your field, right? So if you are someone that's in the graphic arts world, probably don't want to have a whole bunch of text to demonstrate your brand. You probably want to use the images and have probably bullet point statements or something else. So again, know your industry, and then happy to talk a little bit more in depth if folks want that. People can reach out to us for a single consultation. It is harder right now in February when the students are still needing us quite a bit, but in our months where it's a little slower, like the summer or around the holidays, we'd actually definitely have a little bit more time to talk to our alum.
We probably have time for one more question, but I do want to address something that came in just to the hosts and panelists just now. One individual was talking about that they're ready to get using the LinkedIn platform, but they don't know where to start. I just want to remind you, if you don't have a LinkedIn profile now, Kristen mentioned this, LinkedIn will take care of you. When you sign up, it is a step-by-step process. Everything is do this, submit, then do this, submit, then do this. I promise you, they will not let you create something that is the worst thing in the world. They will get you set up so you're using something efficiently. So don't worry. I just want to remind those folks that may think that this might be a scary concept. They will take good care of you. The last question I think that we have, and then we have to wrap up here. The skills assessments. This is something that was down in the aspects we talked about when you're talking about the different skills that we can utilize, usually like the top 3 that we can kind of focus on. There are assessments in there. Would you recommend doing those, and what benefit would that provide?
Sure. I haven't used them recently, but why not? When we work with our student population and our recent alum population, and someone says they're proficient in X, we will then follow up, can you give us an example? So I think if that's a way that someone is going to be forced to articulate an example, and that's the way to do it, then absolutely. If you like doing instruments, and some people call them tests, they're really not tests because there's no right or wrong answer, then sure, why not?
I will say there is some downside to skills assessments too, just to look at the positive and the negative. Sometimes people will use those skills assessments to determine whether or not that specific skill should be added to that skills section of the profile. And then you're really utilizing LinkedIn to determine whether that is or is not valuable. Because we all know there's many different ways skills can be utilized. I would say, depending upon how you're utilizing skills assessment, tread wisely, because you also don't want LinkedIn to say, no, this isn't a valid skills of yours, don't list it on your profile, when in reality it may very well be. It's just that you're skilled in it in a different way.
Good point. And how much information do you want LinkedIn to have about you, right? It goes back to privacy. So Josh also mentioned, the step-by-steps. When we first advertised this, we also gave some tips. So if you have the initial advertising about how this seminar was going to be, you might find some other tips out there as well. There's so much online. An hour a week, folks. Don't get intimidated. Don't think you have to spend 8 hours in one day trying to do it. That would frustrate anyone, even if it's your favorite thing to do. So an hour a week, you'll get there for sure.
Well, that being said, huge thanks to both of you. We love having your team join us any chance they can, especially during this month, which is focused on literally your areas of expertise. So I think that having you all here is always a joy and a benefit for our team to collaborate with you all. I know that this was helpful, in many ways from all of our participants here. I learned a few things along the way, and I thought I knew everything there was. So thank you very much. It is possible. So thank you all so much there. I also want to point out that without prompting, both of you dropped in elevating your career without even knowing it. I know Beth called it out, but Chris, I don't know if you heard it, but you did it. So I took note of that. You did drop it in there. So thanks for the plugs. That being said, there are 6 more events coming up this month, everybody. Please make sure that you visit foundation.uconn.edu and check out our events calendar. Go back to the emails you might have received from us about these. There are a great, immense amount of content that's going to be coming out that we're excited to share with you all. So please take a look at that. We will get the recording out to you next week. Hopefully everything worked out well. Enjoy your weekend. And please, if you get a chance, send kudos to Beth and Chris's way. This was phenomenal. Thank you both for sharing your expertise and your time with us.
Thank you for having us.
Totally loved it.
All right, great. Well, talk to you soon. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Chris. And we'll see everybody on the next session. Take care, everybody.